Hello and welcome to the Empower Couples podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay on the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you all just know us as the Freemans.
And this episode is a powerful one, by the way. I think very important, but it's understand why your partner does things the way they do at a deeper level.
Ever wonder to yourself, like, why do they do it that way? Or why
Of course you do.
Why won't they do it this way? And you are like, I really want to understand, like, what is driving that?
To me, this is one of the most significant topics around relationships, but it also has to do a lot with personal development, right? So it's actually where this principle comes from, and we want to just reframe it for relationships here. And how often do we'll put both of ourselves in this category. How often do you get frustrated with your partner because of something they did, right? So when it first happens, you're probably like, ooh, I don't like that. That's not great. But then how much more frustrating is it when it happens multiple times and you really want something to change, which is typically what? When you start to verbalize,
oh yeah,
I'm really going to need you to change that.
I am very frustrated. It can come out as complaints, frustration, reacting to them. Yes.
Well, the main thing, it does become very focused on them. And from this state you could call frustration that you're in, there isn't a lot of influence here. And we've talked about influence before, but this goes to a deeper level, again, on why your partner is doing this. And guess what? When you understand the why, all of a sudden, you do have more sway or influence, or at least understanding at the minimum.
This is going to be much more of like a psychological principle. So you hear us talk a lot about communication. And this is you being able to understand your partner and also just the human brain. You know, what is it that drives people to take certain actions? What is it that has you do certain things? Like, are you even aware about why do I do things this way? Or if I really want to change a habit, why can't I? Like, why is it that I only do it for a couple days and then I'm back to my old ways? So this is really important for you to just understand in general as a human being who wants to grow, right? Obviously, you listening to this podcast, you're someone who's into personal growth. And so this is the psychological principle for you to understand about human beings. But before we go into this, and I mean, Aaron's going to drop some wisdom in this episode.
Oh, man, you're setting me up.
Yeah, no pressure.
Now I got to deliver.
But also, for more and for you to really plug in and take action on these things, you've got to join the 5-Day Couples Challenge that is starting February 7th. And yes, this is for 2022 to make sure you're listening to the right year. So it is starting in just a few days if you're listening to this episode when it drops.
1 week?
Yeah.
Yeah, 1 week.
So the 5-Day Couples Challenge is your way to be able to have a focused period of time where we're guiding you with specific short lessons, which is really just teeing you up for the exercise that you're going to do each day with your partner. And before you go, oh, but we're busy, we've got kids, we've got so much going on with our careers. We designed this for busy people. And you guys, we have a 6-week-old. So if we can host this thing with a 6-week-old baby, then you can participate. So go to mycoupleschallenge.com. There's an epic group of couples already signed up. We want you in it, and we're excited. So go to mycoupleschallenge.com. And Aaron, let's dive in to this topic.
Well, before we do, we want to make it applicable. So as you're listening, we want you to think about something that you haven't been able to understand about your partner. You know, why they do something that frustrates you. And it could be around how they communicate with you, how they talk to you. It could be honestly as simple as why they leave something on the ground, why they don't clean up after themselves in a certain way.
It could be a spending pattern, like why do they spend money a certain way?
Why they speak to your kids in a certain way, why they haven't even made the change that you've asked them to make.
Yes. So get that present in your mind. Like, what is going to be impactful for your relationship if you're able to reframe it or be able to see it differently? So get that present in your mind.
Now, do you have an example
for
us?
Yeah. And I know you're going to give more of a present day example, but you guys will probably laugh at this. This is like such a depiction of where we've come. Okay, so in the beginning of our dating experience, Aaron was not really open to a committed relationship. So much so that he had books on his bookshelf about being...
One book.
Yeah, okay, maybe one. I'm listening like...
It's right there, actually. I could see it. We kept it.
Yeah, and it was literally about why you should be single for your life, basically. And so I see this and I'm a little bit like, oh, red flag a little bit. But anyway,
red flag.
It'd be a longer story to go into that. But the part I wanted to focus on is I knew that he had some fears and concerns around commitment, but he had this funny thing about how he would not see me on Sundays. Like, okay, it's like, let's hang out or go out on Friday. Yep. Okay. Maybe get together also on Saturday as things progressed. But Sunday, if I just wanted to be like, hey, let's watch a movie, hey, come over. I'm just getting things done around the house. Nope. No, I'm not available. I've got things going on. So finally one day.
I didn't lie.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Well,
I know I didn't lie. I don't know what I said.
Eventually, I remember asking.
I just said no.
Yeah. I remember asking, like, what is it about Sundays that you won't see me? And you ended up sharing.
It was just too domesticated. Like
too
Sunday
serious.
I had a job back then. And so I was just getting things ready for the week. Maybe my lunches,
laundry,
doing the laundry, getting set up, folding clothes. And it was my day. Like we didn't need to see each other. It was too domesticated. I wasn't going to have you over while I was folding clothes. It was too much. We didn't need to do that.
Right. Because you were afraid of commitment, it felt too serious. Like it felt too much as if we were, committed to each other, too intimate.
Afraid of commitment. I never really thought about that. Was I actually afraid of commitment?
I mean, you had a book about being single for life. I would say so. But anyway, so that's an example of where I was like, why does he do things like this? Or why won't he see me? And I had to understand the psychology of what was driving that action. Aaron, do you want to give an example current day?
I'll give mine as we go through. So let's start in here, right? So for yourself, we're going to go again it's a personal development principle. Now, the furthest out is really that there is a result or an outcome that you want. In this case, it could be in your life as an individual person. Obviously, we're talking about relationships. So there is an outcome or a result that is happening for your partner or within the relationship.
It's like the reality of things. Like what is?
The end goal, exactly. What is happening? So the question becomes, well, what is it that causes an outcome or a result?
Think about that for a second. What is it?
And when we were in the seminar that we learned this, it doesn't take too long. People throw out some guesses, but pretty much people get to an action, like action. Like you have to act to produce some kind of result or an outcome. But also note that it sounds weird, but a non-action in this case is an action.
Yeah. Like, why don't they do something, right? So you can be doing something or not doing something.
Yeah, you can choose to not do something, and that causes something to happen. I could choose not to pay the bills, and that's going to cause a result, right? So the action and non-action are both in the realm of an action. So now we get to, well, okay, what is it that then consistently and reliably drives the action?
And think about that for yourself. Like, what is it that drives me to do this? And again, think for yourself, but also think for your partner. What is it that drives me to eat candy every single night?
Candy.
Or what is it?
Because I love the taste.
Yeah. What is it that doesn't have me go to the gym for more than 3 days in a row? Like, why is it that I stop after 3 days?
Yeah. On a deeper level, what is it that causes me to have this tone with my kids? What is it that causes me to feel frustration or anxiety? What is it that causes me to not pursue or maybe succeed in my career or start a business or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Now, as you're thinking about that, some of the common answers we know to this are, okay, thoughts. So thoughts drive actions. Well, yes, partly, but it's not consistent and reliable, because have you had a thought about something but still didn't act on it? Of course.
Yeah.
This is like dreaming, right? It's having a vision. You've actually done this a lot, And in this case, you may have had a thought about saying something to your partner, and sometimes you don't.
Or
you
even,
don't say anything.
I want to add to that, just talking about something also doesn't change it. So we hear from couples a lot, oh, we have talked about that before. We've talked about getting better at communication. We've talked about, stopping these patterns with communication. We've talked about learning parenting techniques so that we work with our kids better. So you two talking about it doesn't necessarily change the result or even really drive your action, does it?
No, not consistently or reliably. So then, throughout people throwing out guesses at seminars, someone then says, it's your belief. And that seems like that's the answer, but it's actually not the answer either. It's not consistent and reliable. It does not always drive you into action, because similar to the thoughts, do you have a belief about something that you haven't acted on? Do you have a belief about, I don't even know. I can't even come up with anything right now. But if you have a belief about your ability to start a business, or a belief maybe in an investment and it being profitable,
or even believing that a certain communication tool is helpful, right? People will say to us all the time, man, that communication principle that you taught is really helpful. Okay, believing in it.
Yeah. I believe it'll work too.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that it really changed your action.
Or I believe it'll work for someone else.
Yeah.
Which starts to get us into the realm of the actual answer. So what consistently drives your action is your perception. So let that sink in. It is the way in which you see something. And in this case, we do want to dive into 3 levels of perception. There is the way that you perceive yourself.
Yeah.
There's the way you perceive your partner, and then the way you perceive the situation.
Yeah. So even those 3 levels, right? Like, think about something you're wanting to change in your own behavior. Well, how do you perceive yourself? One that I'll give, and I wasn't even planning on saying this one, but one kind of belief and actually, no, perception I had to work through. And it just really was ingrained from a very young age, was this, like, I'm like perceived as being mean. Like I'm mean, or I'm too straight up. I'm too straightforward. And so in a way I stifled myself a lot, right? Like, oh, people can't handle me and I can't be my full self. I'm too straightforward. I'm too bold. I'm all those things, right? So that was my perception of myself, was I'm too much for people.
Oh, what? Yeah, wasn't that in dating? There was something about, oh, you were in a relationship prior, you had your own business, right? Wasn't there? It's really a subconscious perception of yourself, right? About being either assertive, like you're saying, bold, being a badass, if you will, and your perception not only of yourself but of other men was that would cause them to feel something, like to not be attracted to you, right?
Yeah, it would just be like a turn off, like too much, like they wanted someone like softer, more feminine, right? Not as much pursuing, right? So that was just my perception, which drove certain actions. Aaron, can you think of a certain perception of yours that you've explored?
I mean, there's a lot. There's the situation that you brought up, right? And so my perception wasn't even about the Sunday, right? Or it being too domesticated. My perception was that ultimately, look, this is why it's hard to get to, because perception, sometimes you can be consciously aware of your quote unquote belief, but this is really at a subconscious level. We sort of mentioned this before. The way you see something is the way that it actually is in reality. That's why it's hard to access, because this is 100% the way it is. You don't see it as a thought. You don't see it as a belief, because
it feels real.
That can be, exactly. So for me, honestly, the perception was I was not valuable enough to, I don't know, another person, basically. I don't even think it had to do with you.
Yeah, it just wasn't valuable enough for a relationship.
So the biggest thing around what drove my actions to not see you on Sunday was actually the perception that I wasn't valuable. Because if that would, given that actually was true, what would be inevitable is that you would uncover that I'm not valuable and I would get hurt again.
I'm even thinking of another example. And then we'll get to the other areas of perception about your partner in this situation. Okay, so we have been doing sessions recently where there's been this theme of why they hold back sharing, expressing certain needs and desires in the relationship. And we've been working on the perception a lot with people. And it was so interesting. We kept going like deeper and deeper with each partner. And finally, the partner was able to vocalize for themselves, because I think it was even a blind spot for them. And they said, well, I'm afraid that I will be seen as a nag. I don't want to be a nag, and I'm afraid
burden also.
Well, that was a different person.
Yeah.
So this was like two conversations, and one in particular, she was very concerned about being perceived as a nag. And so that was driving her actions and really her non-actions, not expressing herself in a certain way. And then of course the result that she was having with her partner. So it's so interesting when you really explore, and I want you to even think about this after the episode. What is my perception of myself in the relationship? You know, when it comes to a certain situation that you want to be able to change, really unpack how you see yourself.
What was the thing you said to me over the weekend while we were on our neighborhood? We were in other neighborhoods pushing Sky, yeah.
You mean about my perception of myself?
Yeah, because it was the perception, see if this gets confusing, you had a perception about how I perceived you.
Yes. Right. I know, right? That's like almost the Matrix, right? 2 layers deep. Well, it was interesting because I hadn't really vocalized it or thought of it to myself till we were discussing it, but I had this perception that I was like annoying you.
Oh, that's right.
Right? Me asking for help with different things that I needed. And sometimes it was like the same thing over and over again. Hey, can you fill my water? Because I'm feeding Sky. Hey, can you make my salad? And it felt like I was asking for the same thing over and over. And so I was like, I feel as though I'm annoying right now. And that was me. And so then it was having me be a certain way, like the way I was asking.
It drove your actions, right? It drove your actions and at one point your tone.
Yes.
Which is then... That's what I was kind of responding to, was sort of the tone or attitude in which the statement or the language was actually coming to me.
Yep. Okay. So that is the perception of yourself, which is one element. Aaron, do you want to dive into then your perception of your partner?
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge one. And it takes a lot of honesty to really look, because we do an exercise in coaching sessions about writing how you think your partner perceives you, and then writing down how you perceive your partner. Then you get to share to see, is that actually accurate? And of course, the default is to write the positive things. You know, I see you as
such a
good parent. And that's a lot of the ones that we get. The easy, low-hanging fruit, you're great at your job. You know, you're such a good friend to other people. You're a great parent. And then sometimes we got to be honest that you might see your partner as lazy, as not trustworthy, because you've asked them, from your perception again, you've asked them multiple times to change and they don't. So you can't trust them. They are unwilling. They're rigid. They don't want to make any change. So that's the perception you actually start to form about your partner.
And then that feels really real to you. You can't even see them as their just kind of purest self. You see them through that filter.
Well, then now notice, if that's the way you see your partner, now what actions would you almost automatically take if that's the way you see them?
Yes.
You would probably start bringing things up. Maybe before that, you would say things over and over again, which affirms your own perception of yourself that you're a nag, right? See how this plays into each other?
Wow.
It's almost like we don't choose our actions. This is a whole other level. It's actually science behind that. We make a decision in our minds because of the speed at which the pathway fires in our brain. Now I know I'm going deep. We make the decision before we know there's a decision to be made.
Yes.
Because the pathway fires faster.
Yep.
So it's interesting, right? That's the Matrix. To actually think, I've made a decision before I realize the decision is made. it really speaks to that your actions, you're not really choosing. It's almost like you have a set of perception. And whatever, actually, you could talk about Joe Dispenza. He says the program, whatever that program of perception is in your mind, that basically just automatically runs and automatically has actions. And those actions have a very limited set of results and outcomes.
Yeah.
So just changing your action doesn't actually do anything because it's the perception that gives you access to different actions.
Yes. So that's you exploring your perception of your partner, but then you can also flip this. And again, if you're thinking about what we said at the beginning, like what's a situation you've wanted to understand, why do they do it or why won't they? And it's related to you, you've got to ask yourself, how do they see me? Right? How is it that they see me? I'm their partner. And, or like if it's something with your kids, like why do they interact with your kids a certain way? Well, how do they see your kids? It's a certain perception that they have of your kids. So that can be really hard to explore for yourself if you're like, ooh, maybe deep down, they actually see me as constantly telling them where they're not doing good enough. Maybe that's why they act so defensive to me. Or maybe they see me as someone that's only focused on the house and the kids. And so they don't plan a date for us or initiate intimacy.
Yeah. Actually, this is something I brought up. When you're doing the level 1 work of the perception, the reason you may say some of those things like, oh, they're a good parent, they're a supportive spouse. But if you were to be honest, the perception is they don't see me as desirable anymore.
That's true.
So you say all these other positive things, which is kind of a distraction from you actually admitting what's actually there.
Exactly. And so, I mean, this can be hard to explore, but if you're really wanting to understand your partner at a deeper level and change something, you have to do it. So then,
I know you have some actions for the listener here, but the last one I wanted to cover more so briefly is there's a perception of the situation. And there's some interplay between your perception of yourself, your partner, and the situation. There's a dynamic, they're linked. But my example, right, which is going to be more funny, is nowadays with where we're at with Sky, the situation in the evening, I'm the one that reorganizes everything in the house to get back to like where I like it, right? My own perception is a level of organization and cleanliness that I like. And it's not to say that you don't like that because we're close. But I walk around and I'm like, if I wasn't doing this every night, every blanket that we have would be out on the couch.
Sky's blankets.
Yeah, Sky's blankets. They would all be out here.
Because I don't have a moment to put them away. I'm holding
her. Right. So, but if I'm just kind of doing that, I'm like, why is Jocelyn leaving all these blankets out? And so ahead of this episode, I thought, well, how must you see that situation of the blankets? And what's clear to me is that in a way, you don't have any perception of the blankets, meaning it's not a priority to you at all because your perception is, how do I get Sky down for the evening nap so that we can transition into sleeping so that we don't have a tough sleep night, right? So your perception is actually on something else where here I am thinking about the blankets. Why doesn't Jocelyn put these away? You don't have a view of the blankets because you're thinking of something else.
Yeah.
So I wanted to say that because it's funny, but also you have to acknowledge that a situation that you see as important is not that important to your partner. So when you think, why aren't they doing this? Well, this situation does not occur to them as something that's top priority.
Interesting.
Something else is a higher priority.
Yep.
That doesn't mean they see you as a person as a lower priority.
Yep.
But we walk around creating this perception of, well, now they don't care.
Yes.
Well, it's not that they don't care. It's that something else is occupying that space in their mind.
Yes.
So notice how this gives you access to being more understanding of them, maybe more compassionate, at least curious. Oh, you know what? Maybe they're not putting the same amount of thought towards this as I am.
I love that. And you can apply that. Like if you think about something, again, you're wanting to shift in the partnership, or you wish your partner was doing differently. Maybe it's around finances. If you wonder like, why on earth do they operate this way with money? Well, you have to really explore, well, how do they perceive money? Or how do they perceive our finances? Do they perceive our finances as, abundant? And so then they, feel comfortable spending? Or do they perceive your finances as not and like scarce, and so they act out of fear? Or maybe it's your kids. Maybe you notice that you respond really calmly to your kids when they're having a temper tantrum, but your partner kind of gets more aggressive or louder, just says like, stop, maybe even starts to raise their voice at the kid. Well, maybe they perceive that situation as they're disrespecting me. The kids are disrespecting me, but you don't see it that way. So you really got to like zoom out and observe your partner and really be like, how is it that they see this moment right here? And I love that you said a lot of times that's different than how you see it.
Oh yeah, very often. To really track this back, look at the action and ask yourself, how must they be perceiving this or me such that this is the action they're taking?
Yep.
And it helps me because it's like, well, they're not even necessarily choosing the action again, right? It's the perception that is this program that automatically runs the actions.
Yeah. I want to address one that we hear unfortunately too often from people is, my partner doesn't want to work on the marriage, right? So that may be what you really think is the truth. But when we talk to them, really what they can unpack is they perceive it as if they start to quote unquote work on the marriage, all they know is the idea of counseling where they walk into a room and it now becomes rehashing everything and pointing the finger. And so they don't want that.
That's such
right?
a good point.
So that's how they perceive that situation.
Yeah.
And so people often open up to us a lot, people who traditionally don't want to work on things. And the reason why is because we shift their perception.
Yeah,
We
totally.
shift it to, it's not about rehashing things, pointing the finger at each other and now leaving like in an argument. Instead, it's, hey, what you're actually doing here is you're understanding each other and you're gaining skills.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, this is different.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to give that as an example of, you may think your partner is fixed and inflexible and unwilling to change, when really you just maybe haven't understood fully what their perception is of you, themselves, or the situation.
So the bold action then, if there is an area like this, is to go ahead and ask them, hey, how do you see this situation? We would normally say, because of the personal development that we've gone through, how does this occur to you?
Yeah, and that might not make complete sense. You could try it, but they might, what do you mean, how does this occur to me? So it could sound like, how does this occur to me? How do you see this situation? Tell me your perspective on.
Yeah, there you go. That's good.
Right? So then they might, well, okay, tell me your perspective on, when our kids are throwing a temper tantrum. Or tell me.
For some reason, it just came to me saying, hey, what is your perception of this?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
I only say that because, I have a perception myself of not being told what to do. So I know it's funny, but it's there for me, right? It's a program. Hey, tell me. My immediate visceral response is, don't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Or you are telling me what to do. It's probably a better way to say it, right? That immediate program is even just the phrasing of the language. Hey, tell me. My perception is, you're telling me what to now do next.
It could sound like, I'd love to know your perspective on. Tell me the way you see this. And I think this is a great conversation.
That sounds like it's coming into me still.
Okay, gosh. I think this is a great conversation for like on a walk, something where it's not going to feel to your partner as if they're being psychoanalyzed, right? Because that's not what this is. You're just getting curious and you're having a different exploratory conversation. Or you can even just observe them, just kind of notice, okay, they keep taking that action, and just pay attention. What, how must they see this in order to keep taking that action? And I also encourage you to do this self-exploration. If there's something in yourself you've wanted to shift, or start doing, stop doing, and it could be related to your partnership, but also in life. I mean, a huge one that I think people always set the goal at the beginning of the year is, I'm going to get healthy. I'm going to stop eating, junk food, and I'm going to start going to the gym. And then it doesn't last. Well, why? Because of your perception. Your actions haven't lasted. So this is a deeper principle. We hope that this has been really insightful for you. And I just really want to shift your perception right now, you, the listener, which is you cannot move forward in your life without the 5-day couples challenge.
Okay.
And the reason why is because it is going to be so empowering. It is going to give you step-by-step ways for you to communicate better with your partner. Each day covers one of the 5 C's: communication, conflict, connection, overcoming challenges, and collaboration.
Yeah.
And so it is going to be a good shift in your perception. You're going to see things differently. You're going to be able to take new actions in your relationship together. So go to mycoupleschallenge.com and get signed up for that. We don't host these very often, sometimes only once a year, maybe max twice we did last year. So go get registered. And then Aaron, you were hoping for a couple reviews, right, for the podcast?
Oh, yeah. I'm just going to ask, as it's such a support for us, I was going to say something funny, that it's me and you, and we're sitting in this room.
Yes.
So we don't have the immediate feedback. And it's exciting for no other reason. It's exciting. It's inspiring to me personally, to both of us, to see the reviews. It kind of keeps us going with the podcast, knowing that it's getting received, it's getting implemented, it's making a difference. There's really no other way to really know directly from the podcast except for the reviews. So, take this time to just go on there. Please review the podcast with, honestly, whatever the rating is that you feel appropriate.
Yes.
Our idea is that this is awesome, and there's really no relationship skills better than this, but we're not here to tell you what rating to give it.
Yeah, so any review is really, really helpful. We love you guys. We love connecting with you on social media as well. And as always, we'll talk to you on the next episode.